History may have its fair share of heroes, but it has twice as many fools. Men so blinded by ambition, by ideology, by sheer stupidity, that they march entire civilizations off the cliff of their own making. We often think of history as this grand, complex tapestry, woven with intricate threads of cause and effect. But sometimes, when you really dig into it, you find these glaring, almost comical blunders. These moments where you just have to shake your head and wonder, what were they thinking? From an arrogant general who was literally told that he was walking into a trap but went there anyway, to a brain-dead half-wit who killed 90% of his country's male population in an unwinnable war, here are some of history's biggest idiots. The American West, a land of rugged beauty, of untamed wilderness, and of bloody conflict. This vast expanse has been the backdrop for countless tales of adventure and misadventure, of triumph and tragedy. It's a setting ripe with stories of bravery, of resilience, and of human folly, but also of staggering incompetence. The kind of incompetence that turns potential victories into catastrophic defeats. And few stories embody that last part quite like the tale of George Armstrong Custer and his disastrous last stand. A tale that has been etched into the annals of history as a cautionary example of hubris. Now Custer, he was a character larger than life, a flamboyant, glory-hungry cavalryman with a penchant for self-promotion. He was the kind of man who thrived on attention, who sought the limelight at every opportunity. He was the kind of guy who, even in victory, seemed to be looking for a bigger stage, a more dramatic backdrop. His ambitions knew no bounds, and boy did he find it at the Little Bighorn, a stage set for a drama of epic proportions. Picture this, June 1876. The air is thick with tension, the kind that precedes a storm. The stench of war hangs heavy in the air. Soldiers ready their weapons, nerves on edge. Custer and his 7th Cavalry are on the hunt for Lakota Sioux and Cheyenne warriors. They believe they are on the cusp of a decisive victory. They're outnumbered, sure, but Custer, fueled by ego and bad intel, is convinced this will be an easy victory, another feather in his already well-feathered cap. His confidence is unshakable. Another feather in his already well-feathered cap. He sees himself as invincible, a hero in the making. He divides his forces, a classic blunder, ignoring the warnings of his scouts, men who actually understood the terrain and the enemy they faced. His arrogance blinds him to the reality of the situation, men who actually understood the terrain and the enemy they faced. These weren't just warnings, mind you, they were practically prophecies. These weren't just warnings, mind you, they were practically prophecies. The scouts could see the disaster looming on the horizon. "Don't go down there, General," they pleaded, "it's a death trap." But their words fell on deaf ears. But Custer, blinded by his own ambition, wouldn't hear it. He was determined to press on, convinced of his own invincibility. He charged headlong into the Little Bighorn Valley, a decision that would seal his fate, into the waiting arms of thousands of Lakota and Cheyenne warriors led by the likes of Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. They were ready and waiting. The ensuing battle, well, it wasn't much of a battle at all. It was a massacre, a one-sided slaughter. Custer and every single one of his men, slaughtered to the last man. The details are gruesome, the kind of thing that makes you question the very nature of human savagery. The brutality was unimaginable, the kind of thing that makes you question the very nature of human savagery. But beyond the bloodshed, beyond the sheer scale of the defeat, lies a chilling lesson in hubris. But beyond the bloodshed, beyond the sheer scale of the defeat, lies a chilling lesson in hubris, a lesson that echoes through the ages. Custer's last stand wasn't just a military disaster, it was a monument to arrogance, a testament to what happens when ego trumps reason on the battlefield. It stands as a stark reminder, a testament to what happens when ego trumps reason on the battlefield. It's a story that's been told and retold, analyzed and debated for over a century. It's a story that's been told and retold, analyzed and debated for over a century, and yet, it still has the power to shock, to appall, and to remind us that even the most decorated heroes can be undone by their own worst impulses. The lessons are timeless, and yet, it still has the power to shock, to appall, and to remind us that even the most decorated heroes can be undone by their own worst impulses. Now, some might argue that Custer was a product of his time. A man forged in the crucible of a brutal and unforgiving frontier, a man shaped by the harsh realities of his environment, a man forged in the crucible of a brutal and unforgiving frontier, and there's some truth to that. The frontier was a place that demanded toughness, resilience, and sometimes ruthlessness. And there's some truth to that. But that doesn't excuse his recklessness, his utter disregard for the lives of his men. His actions were beyond the pale, but that doesn't excuse his recklessness, his utter disregard for the lives of his men. It doesn't erase the fact that he marched them knowingly into a meat grinder, a decision that cost them dearly. It doesn't erase the fact that he marched them knowingly into a meat grinder. The tragedy of Little Bighorn isn't just the loss of life, as horrific as that was, it's the waste. The tragedy of Little Bighorn isn't just the loss of life, as horrific as that was, it's the waste. The waste of potential, the waste of opportunity, all sacrificed on the altar of one man's ego. The cost was immeasurable. The waste of potential, the waste of opportunity, all sacrificed on the altar of one man's ego. And that, my friends, is a lesson that resonates far beyond the dusty plains of Montana, a lesson for all time. And that, my friends, is a lesson that resonates far beyond the dusty plains of Montana. It's a lesson that speaks to the dangers of unchecked ambition. It's a lesson that speaks to the dangers of unchecked ambition, the seductive allure of glory, and the importance of listening to those who actually know what the hell they're talking about. Wisdom often comes from the most unexpected places. The seductive allure of glory, and the importance of listening to those who actually know what the hell they're talking about. And the importance of listening to those who actually know what the hell they're talking about. So the next time you find yourself tempted to charge blindly into the fray, remember George Armstrong Custer. So, the next time you find yourself tempted to charge blindly into the fray, remember George Armstrong Custer. Remember the man who rode to his doom, not with a bang but with a whimper. Remember the man who rode to his doom, not with a bang but with a whimper, his name forever synonymous with arrogance and folly, a cautionary tale for the ages, his name forever synonymous with arrogance and folly, a name that will forever remind us of the perils of hubris. From the sun-baked plains of America, we shift our gaze across the Atlantic, to the heart of Africa, to the Belgian Congo, a land shrouded in darkness, a place where the very air seemed to whisper tales of unimaginable cruelty. This was a land rich in resources, yet its wealth became a curse, a magnet for the greed and brutality of men who saw it as nothing more than a treasure trove to be plundered. And at the center of this heart of darkness, we find our next contender for history's biggest idiot, King Leopold II of Belgium, a man whose name has become synonymous with exploitation and inhumanity. Now Leopold, he wasn't a warrior king like Custer, no, he was a different breed of fool altogether. He was a man driven by greed, a man who saw an entire continent as his own personal piggy bank. His ambitions were cloaked in the guise of philanthropy, but his actions revealed a heart of stone. You see, Leopold, he fancied himself a philanthropist, a bringer of civilization to the savage lands of Africa. He spoke of progress and enlightenment, but his true intentions were far more sinister. But beneath that veneer of benevolence lurked a monster, a man whose lust for wealth knew no bounds. His so-called civilizing mission was nothing more than a cover for his insatiable greed. Under the guise of humanitarian aid, Leopold seized control of the Congo, a land 76 times the size of his own tiny kingdom. He manipulated international opinion, presenting himself as a benevolent ruler, while orchestrating one of the most brutal regimes in history. He declared it his personal property, a vast estate ripe for exploitation. The Congo Free State, as it was ironically named, became a hell on earth for its inhabitants. Rubber was the prize, the black gold that fueled his avarice. The demand for rubber in Europe and America was skyrocketing, and Leopold saw an opportunity to amass a fortune. And to extract it, Leopold unleashed a reign of terror that would make even the most hardened stomach churn. His agents enforced quotas with unimaginable cruelty, turning the Congo into a vast labor camp. Imagine, if you will, the horrors inflicted upon the Congolese people. Entire villages were enslaved, families torn apart, and lives destroyed in the relentless pursuit of profit. Forced labor on a scale so vast, so brutal, it beggars belief. Men, women, and children were driven to the brink of death, their bodies and spirits broken by the relentless demands of their oppressors. Men, women, children worked to death, their bodies broken, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of Leopold's greed. The human cost of his ambition was staggering, and the punishments meted out for the slightest infraction. The brutality was beyond comprehension, a testament to the depths of human cruelty. Hands chopped off, villages burned, hostages taken, their very existence held ransom against the quota of rubber demanded by their Belgian overlords. The atrocities committed were beyond the pale. It's estimated that during Leopold's reign of terror, over 10 million Congolese perished. 10 million lives snuffed out in the name of greed and power. 10 million souls extinguished, not in the heat of battle, not in the throes of some natural disaster, but systematically, deliberately, at the hands of men driven mad by avarice. The scale of the tragedy is almost incomprehensible. Photographs from that time tell a story more harrowing than any history book ever could. They capture the suffering, the despair, and the sheer inhumanity of Leopold's regime. Images of emaciated bodies, their eyes hollow, their limbs twisted at unnatural angles, a testament to the depths of human depravity. These haunting images serve as a stark reminder of the horrors that were inflicted. And Leopold, the architect of this genocide, he slept soundly in his palace, his pockets overflowing with blood money. He lived a life of luxury, far removed from the suffering he caused. He dined on delicacies surrounded by opulence while millions starved, bled, and died in his name. The contrast between his life and the lives of his victims is staggering. It's enough to make you question the very fabric of humanity, to wonder how one man could be so utterly devoid of empathy, of basic human decency. How could he justify such cruelty? But here's the thing about Leopold, and it's a chilling thought. He didn't see himself as a villain. In his own twisted mind, he believed he was a savior. No, in his own mind, he was the hero of his own twisted narrative. He saw himself as a civilizing force, bringing progress to a land he deemed primitive. He genuinely believed he was doing the Congolese a favor, civilizing them, bringing them into the light of his own warped worldview. His delusion was as vast as his cruelty, and that perhaps is the most terrifying aspect of Leopold's story. The fact that he could commit such atrocities while believing he was righteous. It's a stark reminder that evil often doesn't wear a menacing mask. It doesn't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It can be insidious, hiding behind a facade of benevolence. Sometimes it wears a crown and a benevolent smile, all the while orchestrating atrocities that would shame the devil himself. The true face of evil can be deceptively ordinary. Leopold's legacy is a stain on humanity, a stark reminder of the darkness that can fester in the human heart when greed and power go unchecked. His story is a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked ambition. It's a story that demands to be told, not to glorify the monster, but to expose him for what he was, a small, petty man who, through a toxic cocktail of ambition and delusion, inflicted unimaginable suffering on millions. His actions serve as a grim reminder of the capacity for evil within us all. So, there you have it. Two men, two continents, separated by vast oceans and cultures, two very different paths to the same destination, the dustbin of history, where forgotten stories lie. Custer, the embodiment of reckless ambition, charging headlong into oblivion, a tragic figure of his own making. Leopold, the architect of a genocide, a man whose legacy is forever tainted, his hands stained with the blood of millions, a dark chapter in human history. Their stories, as different as they may seem, share a common thread, woven through time, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, of blind ambition, and the inevitable downfall that follows. Of the seductive allure of self-delusion. These men, who thought themselves invincible, these idiots as we've called them, serve as stark reminders that history is not just a parade of heroes and villains, but a complex narrative, a messy, intricate tapestry woven with threads of brilliance and stupidity, of courage and cowardice, of triumph and utter catastrophic failure, where lessons are learned the hard way. And it's in those failures, in those moments of defeat, in those moments where humanity stumbles and falls, that we often find the most valuable lessons, the ones that force us to confront the darkness within ourselves, the shadows of our past, the ones that force us to confront the darkness within ourselves, the shadows of our past, the darkness that whispers, even now, in the shadows of our own time, urging us to learn and grow.